Doing good is good for business. As the world's largest B Corp, Danone North America is committed to doing good for the world and for your business, with the brands customers love like International Delight, Oikos, Silk, Horizon Organic, and many others. Learn more at DanoneAwayFromHome.com. All right, so welcome back to another episode of the Fast Casual Nation podcast. And as you know, this podcast is the one that talks about the fast casual restaurant business and where it's going in the future. And there's a lot of changes in the industry, and fast casual, of course, is at the epicenter, everything from technology to actually how operations are running. And with me today, I've got the CEO of Velvet Taco, Clay Dover. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Paul. How are you?
I'm good, man. Nice to see your bright and shiny face. The last time I saw you, you were up doing pitch deals at ICR.
Yeah, lots changed. That feels like 5 years ago.
I know, and it was just last fall. So, well, congrats on your move over to Velvet. I know you've been there for a few years, but I want to catch up with you a little bit about where Velvet is today. What's the store count? How are you guys rolling along now?
Sure. So we have 14 restaurants that we've opened up, all company owned. We've been growing steadily over the last few years. We also have, a lot of signed leases. We have 6 restaurants that we've actually started back under construction. So of the 14 restaurants, we've opened all but one more. We have one more in Chicago that we're going to reopen. I'm hoping in about a week or so is our game plan. So by the end of June, we'll have all of our restaurants back open, running. Many of them, we closed 5 during the COVID period temporarily and kept 9 open. We're feeling optimistic and optimistic enough to restart building and construction on several sites that we had to stop right in the middle of everything.
Yeah, so a lot to unpack here. I'm kind of curious when you guys started to close some of the units and then kind of reposition the brand and prepare for this. Were you mostly staying like most fast casuals in takeout and delivery, or how was the operational setup?
Yeah, so we had to go 100% takeout and delivery only in all of our restaurants that we kept open. So the 9 restaurants we kept open, we temporarily closed 5 restaurants. And, slowly we've been adding a restaurant on this week. We just opened up Charlotte, North Carolina. So we've got that restaurant up and running. So that's exciting. We kept mostly our core restaurants in the state of Texas open. Chicago, we had one open, but yes, they were all doing delivery and takeout only. So, it was severely hampered. And as we've been able to open up the dining rooms, we've welcomed guests back in.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, Clay, when you look at, just the situation we are in right now during this crisis, I've seen a lot of operators have really kind of changed a little bit in terms of how their operations are actually running.
Sure.
Are there any things that are specific to the changes that you guys have done as a company that maybe you're considering to look at more from a long-term standpoint?
Yeah, I think, look, this is my personal opinion. I think the whole state of fast casual has changed. I think that some of the things that we've been able to adapt to are going to stick. I think the biggest ones in my mind are takeout and delivery. For ourselves, we did a large percentage of our sales already in takeout and delivery. And thankfully, we had revamped our entire program prior to COVID, including takeout packaging, procedures, training. Our sales, we did 37% through takeout and delivery before COVID. Now we're north of 50%, even with all of our dining rooms open. So I think that's one of the biggest things that will continue to stay. I believe that consumers will continue to want to take that experience home and just be a little bit concerned about, coming into restaurants. I think that's going to stay. I think you're going to see a big focus continue around takeout, delivery. We have to adapt to packaging, et cetera.
Right, for sure. I'm kind of curious so takeout, this is a good topic to kind of dive into.
Sure.
Because you're right. We've talked to a lot of CEOs here recently. They've really kind of pivoted to takeout and delivery as kind of the front of plate. With that, does it change up your unit economics from a standpoint of real estate? Because I know you guys are in some deals. What does that do to your footprint? How does that kind of change the way you look at real estate going forward?
Sure, that's the big one. I've had a crash course in lease negotiations and what's in a lease the last few months. We're looking at it as, I believe that it will shrink the size of restaurants in general. We
Okay.
had already started and will continue to revamp our line. We're calling it the dual-sided line, where we'll actually have a flow of product going towards a takeout window or a pickup window, specifically for takeout and delivery. And then on the other side, it'll be all for dine-in. So if you think about the dynamics of how the kitchen flows and where our team members stand and what they can grab, it completely revamps, I believe, the dynamics of both your layout of the kitchen, the size of your dining rooms. We're shrinking the size of our box, and I think that's a trend that you'll see going forward, specifically from fast casual, as there's an increase of takeout and less people hanging out and dining inside the restaurant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Starbucks, of course, has just announced this week that they're really moving a lot. They're accelerating their, takeout only operations. So they're, in terms of new store development, they're going to be looking at going in that direction. I'm kind of curious. Okay, so you mentioned the dual-sided line, and this is something that has been brought up on a few episodes here on Fast Casual. We actually had an episode recently on our Food Leaders event with Otto Othman of Pincho here in Florida, and he mentioned a topic that I think is very intriguing, and that is moving away from the line queue to avoid the social distancing scenarios and still keep throughput at an optimum as we start to come out of this. Do you see that being a potential scenario that you've got to look at for fast casual in the future?
Absolutely. So we've seen a huge increase of our digital. We have a mobile app. You can order ahead and pick up or take out. We've aligned with some partners from a digital standpoint. I think that continues to be even more important going forward. We're trying to figure out how you can order ahead and come and your food is waiting for you. So those who are unfamiliar with Velvet Taco, we are fast casual, but we cook your tacos. We create the meal. We layer the tacos, and then we'll name when it's ready. It's not an assembly line. But how can we be more efficient, quicker, using technology? It's going to be a way of the future going forward. You have to consider that. You have to look at ways to be more efficient within your kitchens. Every guest is that much more important going forward.
Yeah. So in the sense, because I think you hit on a couple of points here that are going to be very important to fast casual operators, is redesigning the kitchen operations, because that's going to, like you had mentioned, it's going to completely change the flow of staff, how you guys are handling, especially your kitchen, because your kitchen, you've got that roastery there going with the chicken and all your proteins. You've
griddles, fryers, a lot of equipment.
It's, a lot of equipment. So, and it's, if you look at that original store there in Dallas, the one that I've been to many times, one of my favorite spots, that's a pretty, but you've got a great patio out there too, but that's a pretty tight location. How would you take that location and maybe kind of help flex it to keep your numbers up for going forward in terms of revenue?
Yeah, I think patios will play a big part going forward. You mentioned that. So our designs going forward, and thankfully, we were already trending in this direction. I think your design for restaurants, you have to consider some sort of takeout, pickup, whether it's a window, whether it's a drive-through pickup, whether it's a dedicated line, whether it's signage. That's going to be the big piece going forwards, is you have to identify that. Nothing's more frustrating when you show up and, a lot of us have had to kind of adjust on the fly during this time period, but there's just confusion, or there's, handwritten signs, and you think you're waiting in the right spot and it's not. You think it's curbside and you find out that I've still got to go inside the restaurant. So going forward with the design standpoint, look, people are still going to crave that experience. You're still going to have people coming in. But my belief, and I think all the stats will tell you, that takeout and delivery is going to be more important. It's going to be here to stay. And whether you're fast casual or otherwise, you have to adapt to that and create a nice, easy way in which you can execute it also. It's one thing just to say, hey, we're going to put up a sign. I sat down with our ops team and we talked about the pros and cons of curbside versus delivery versus drive-through. I mean, it completely changes your model from a labor standpoint, flow of the kitchen.
Big time.
It's huge.
Yeah. And I think as we see, we're going to see a lot of new reinventions, so to speak, in the fast casual area. And then we're also going to see concepts like a Chipotle or someone like that who does have that line queue, which, by the way, I've been in and out of Chipotle several times from a consumer standpoint, but I've also studied it post-event, kind of the crisis situation and kind of how they've handled takeout. And there's some things I think that are not necessarily working, and maybe they're in the process of trying to change what they're doing. But like takeout orders, I was at a recent Chipotle where you had to stand outside to be able to get it. I mean, it's nice and hot and muggy here in Florida, so you can't even enter the store to go pick up your takeout. So that was an odd scenario. And then the line queue is going like a snail's pace. How could they ever do enough volume at at those locations to be able to maintain those kind of real estate scenarios? That's the thing I'm most concerned about, is keeping the volumes up. You know, when you're talking about a 2 million plus fast casual location.
Yeah,
how do you keep those volumes up and stay with that
real estate? You think about
a
line of 10 people, which for us, we have high volume restaurants. It's 10 people is not a lot of people in our line, but when you space that out over 6 feet apart, and we've got all the stickers on the ground and all the signs, and our team's wearing masks, but I mean, that's 60 feet, 10 people. So the line starts snaking, and it's discouraging. You get in line, you're like, is this ever going to move? I'm outside the front door, I'm going around the corner. So there's a lot of things that we have to think through going forward for sure.
Yeah. Clay, you've been a technology guy for quite some time. I've known you as at your times at Raising Cane's, over at Payway when you were out there. And you've really kind of been an early adopter. When you look at the landscape of fast casual and where technology is right now, online ordering, mobile, social, all the things that need to really be in place, obviously contactless payment, where do you think the big elements of tech are going to be implemented going forward here?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One, I think the loyalty piece and the identifying of consumers is going to be even more important. I think what this event has happened is just fast forwarded us, 5 years in advance. I actually feel for those brands that didn't have online ordering capabilities or decided, on March 20th that they should do third-party delivery. Going forward, I think that segmentation of understanding your guests and making sure that you're efficient. I mean, look, marketing, advertising, whether it's through digital channels or traditional channels, is an investment. And you got to make sure that those dollars are being used in a wise way. So if we're going, for example, Raising Cane's, we have several vegetarian tacos. I want to segment and target out those folks that order just vegetarian. And I want to talk to them. I want to talk to their friends, and I want to incent them to come in. I'm only going to know that through some of our segmentation studies, whether it's through our point of sales, system, whether it's through a third party. But I've got to own that data. I think the ownership of the data at the brand level is also key. Some of our delivery partners and other tech partners that we've been partnering with within the industry, they own the data and we have access to it. We as a brand have to own that data. Those are our guests. We have to own it. We have to understand it. So I think that you're going to see more and more importance put on the understanding of the consumer being more efficient. And then the last thing is just everyone's carrying around in their pockets a mini computer. Can you get that mobile app on their phone? Can you be top of mind when they go to reach? And how do you get your brand on that person's phone? And it's going to be a competitive time, but it's very tech focused in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something, and this is something that we saw happening years ago, is that the app integrations for brands were not accelerating, in a huge way, mainly because you had the third-party marketplaces that were developed, obviously like Uber Eats, Grubhub, et cetera, which kind of pulled the wind out of the sail of a lot of the app development, because many companies kind of said, well, hey, if it's already on Uber, why do we need our own app? And I think now everybody's rethinking that position and really looking forward to integrating their own stuff and, as you said, own the data. That brings me to a topic, and that's third-party delivery. And on this show, we talk about it a lot because there's the pros and the cons. And I know it's kind of a double-edged sword. Your thoughts on third-party, is this a long-term play, or do you feel like third-party is eventually going to have to go to maybe a SaaS product and you guys do your own delivery? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that there's a tipping point where that's going to make sense for brands to do their own delivery. I think it's a long-term play. I mean, look, people enjoy the convenience and getting food delivered. We're agnostic, so we've always tried to get the best deal with as many partners as possible. Our studies and just the small research that we've done shows that people are loyal to a specific marketplace. They don't necessarily jump all around. So we've tried to be in front of the guests as much as possible. We've tried to work with those third-party vendors as best as possible. In Texas, there's a group called Favor, in which we've co-branded and done advertising campaigns with them. So I'm a believer in third party. I also think that they need to partner with us. They need to look at it, and them gouging us on fees or some of the horror stories that I've heard. If it's a long-term situation or a long-term, it needs to be a relationship where we both contribute and we both benefit from it. I would much rather someone download the Velvet Taco app, www.velvettaco.com, because then I can control that data. I can control that visit. You have other options. And yes, by the way, the cost of the delivery gets passed on to the consumer, not me.
Right.
So it's a much more economical benefit.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case. Do you think they're going to give up the data? Have you guys had success in getting the data out of these companies?
You have to do it on the front end. If you haven't signed an agreement, or if you're going to re-up an agreement, you make that part of the deal. I think that they will share. The ownership piece, though, is key. Those are our consumers. That they're using it to leverage and to get all kinds of other opportunities in front of guests. We got to have that same opportunity from a brand standpoint. So I believe they will. You just have to be very strong and tough. It's hard to come back after a deal is struck and say, oh, by the way, this is what I want.
Yeah.
Just as I'm learning with a lease.
Yeah. Welcome to that world. I guess, have you had luck with the landlords? Has it been a kind of a 50-50? What's been
I'd say it's been 60-40. I think for the most part, landlords have been beneficial in helping with us. Look, I get it. I understand their position. When we have the conversations, this is not something, a global pandemic that anyone saw. For the most part, landlords have been, helpful and understanding, but at the same time, I get it. They have bills and they have bankers the same way that we do. I think it's about a relationship. It's about working together for the long-term good. For the most part, most of our landlords have been helpful, but it's a difficult situation. Going forward, I understand the concerns on the landlord side, just as I understand, from us, from a consumer standpoint, our guests going to come in, which allows me to pay my rent, which allows them to pay their bankers.
Amen. All right, and I've talked to several operators who've kind of trying to pivot their lease to percentage of sales and doing a lot of different angles to help. That way it kind of lifts all votes if the numbers do come back. Which most of the operations have seen significant lifts. There was a couple of data points I want to get to, but before I get to that, I want to talk about menu for a second.
Sure.
You guys have a very unique menu. It's one that is got some great gourmet, great tacos. I love the product.
Thank you.
What do you think about the Mexican or fresh Mex space in fast casual? Obviously, I won't mention all the other taco concepts, but there seems to be now, I just was looking at some of our data, I would say in the top 100, we're looking at almost 10, 12 brands that are starting to surface.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how this segment is going to flush out?
Yeah, I think on the fast casual side especially, there's an opportunity to expand. We don't consider ourselves, Mexican or fresh Mex. We're eclectic. We're a chef-driven concept. We have tacos such as shrimp and grits or chicken tikka marsala or brisket. But I do see that more and more concepts are elevating and becoming more adventurous in this space. I think that the opportunity to try new flavors and expand beyond just a typical chicken and steak are going to continue.
Right.
See one of the leaders in the category that obviously it does very well. Continue to try new flavors and introduce different promotions, etc. I think that you're going to see that defining move towards a more culinary space versus the same old, rice, beans, and chicken burrito type of concept. So we definitely
Good.
have competitors in the space. I think there's a lot of brands that are doing a nice job. It's also heavily influenced by regions. You guys are down there in Florida. There's definitely a flavor and a trend there. But I think you're going to continue to see an elevation of food. I think you're going to see a continued elevation towards flavor. And it's a good thing. I'm excited about the future and look forward to trying lots of new flavors out there.
I think it's a good thing because I love the fact that Velva's been one of the pioneers in kind of creating that gourmet taco sector. And you're right, the taco is the carrier.
That's exactly right.
Because the cuisine is very, very broad, and so I love that about the product. Let's talk one last point here. State restaurant recovery got a good spike over the past 30 days. So we saw from 5/10, May 10th, this was up 47% in foot traffic, which was a good comeback. Now we're seeing our first week of lower, and this is nationwide lower data that we're tracking, but we're seeing lower foot traffic at 32%, still positive, but 15% down from the previous few weeks. What are your thoughts on consumer confidence in this return? Texas is now, of course, a hot spot. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, so we've got restaurants in 4 or 5 different states. I've actually been out in the restaurants and actually traveled and interacted with guests and talked to guests. I think what you're seeing right now, there's an initial push or a pent-up demand of people wanting and craving to go out, looking for that social interaction. So I think that the original push when we started opening up dining rooms were those adventurous people who wanted to come out and just needed to get out of the house. The interesting thing, at least from our standpoint, is that we're still seeing a very high level of takeout and delivery continue. Yeah. It's almost like an incremental foot traffic has come in, and whether or not those people have shifted from takeout and delivery and replaced it with new people that now feel more comfortable. I'm actually going to order restaurant food and have it delivered or pick it up, or I'm actually comfortable enough to go into a restaurant and get food. I think that you're seeing a little bit of a pullback there. I do think that we're seeing, especially in Texas and some of those cities, a little bit more of an increase of some of the numbers that we've seen recently. Look, the news, the media absolutely influences behavior. The media wants to report, of what's happening and the hot spots.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can follow all the procedures. I think it's important for guests to see us and whether it's our restaurant or anyone else's, to see the increased cleaning procedures, the people spraying down and wearing the masks and the gloves and the hand washing stations that are around in the dining room. I think once people see those and feel more comfortable, I believe it'll spread. There's a University of Michigan study that just came out that said that consumer confidence was starting to increase. So I think it's going to be long. I think it's going to be slow. I think it's going to take a little longer than I think all of us hope it will, but we believe that customers will be coming back.
Yeah. Last point, with takeout and delivery kind of taking over or getting really in the high marks for percentage of sales, we have noticed in restaurants that have reopened that there's almost been a little bit of a collision of the in-room dining and then the takeout load that you've got over here, to where it's causing some service issues. Have you guys kind of balanced that for being able to take on those two new, really kind of different position points now?
Yeah, it is a new world, and something that we have to look through as restaurant operators. As I mentioned, we had a high level of takeout delivery going on beforehand. So we're over half of our restaurants' sales are going out the door. So we did have to sit down, and our operations folks have been phenomenal in thinking through the dynamics of where it queues up, where are you actually going to put? I mean, if you're a restaurateur that's getting ready to open and you expect to continue to see these to-go sales, where are you going to put all of these bags of food? Where before you were able to just put them on a table in the middle of the dining room, as we were. Now you've got to have shelving or space. You've got to think about whether it's a dedicated spot in which you're handing over the bags. Are you going to have a signage to help guide guests through that, or are they going to have to stand in line? There's a lot of things that you have to think through. And we
Yeah.
spent time with our operators who have been phenomenal through this entire ordeal and really thinking practically through it. And sometimes you got to go through it at least for a weekend and watch and see that collision, because you're absolutely right, Paul. Food's coming in one direction, takeout's coming in another. You're used to stacking up to-go boxes on a table. It's in the middle of the dining room. Somebody's running out there and running around. It's
Yeah.
you have to think through it and map it out. Get a
Now it's
whiteboard
an
out
open dining
and
area.
map it out for sure.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of changes are coming for
sure.
fast casual. I've got with me today Clay Dover, CEO and taco maker at Velvet Taco.
That's all I do.
Thanks for stopping in on the show, man.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you guys and all the work you're doing. Keep it up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so you guys are listening in over on iTunes or maybe on Spotify if you're listening to the podcast, or if you are catching us on YouTube right now, make sure and smash the bell. That's how you get notified of content like this and more. We've got a lot of show content that's coming out, and including a lot of analysis on where the restaurant industry is going now that we are somewhat past this crisis. But make sure and send us any ideas that you have to producer@foodabletv.com. And if you want to hit me up on Twitter, just @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time on Fast Casual Nation.